Welcome, this is Bill Foote, and this is episode 3, video number 3, in week 5 of what we're calling System Dynamics 101, the basics of applying a systems thinking approach with closed loop thinking mainly in a management context. And I'm going to be actually portraying this in a humanistic management context. We will get more on that in future episodes. What we started out with was this, Quaestio, in the first episode, Quaestio disputate, a disputed question. And the question might be something as simple as, what does, let's start like this, does quality have anything to do with it? Does stress have anything to do with it? And in some management situations, people say, get over it, or go take a rest. I'm going to put somebody else in. Sounds like a baseball or a foosball team or something of that nature. Okay, fine. Everybody's not quite interchangeable parts, but we got somebody to replace you. But, that's one way of asking the disputed question, though. And from that question, and there are many such questions that we talked about, and an exercise regarding formulating a Quaestio for project rework, that we came up with this schema, this way of thinking. There's an anatomy diagram and our 4 causes analysis. What I wanted to do was update the very next thing we did, which is a dive into the diagram, as you can see. And the dive was to link management actions with questions posed. Now, I always think that there's going to be some delay. And the delay here for me is reflective activity. You got to have reflection, unless it's an urgent situation, in which case I hope we have a playbook, and then we will follow the playbook, modify it, and so on as we go through the crisis. Okay, this is not crisis management we're talking about here, although it could well be, and most crises I've been involved in helping to manage does this. Okay, what are we really trying to do here? The question is posed. Pros, cons, got to have a response. We've already figured out a way to agree. Okay, it might be totally hierarchical by agreement, representative, consensus, collaborative, all sorts of things are possible, but we got to get a response out. And if it's urgent, this delay between response and action is very short. Okay, it's an anti-delay if it's anything. But now this closes the loop. So it's now closed loop thinking. See, all the loop is closed. And this has something positive to add to our discussion of what is a question and how are we analyzing it. Okay. Again, this is Socratic reasoning. So that's what we did there. And we should begin to try in our teams to think this way. Already in the shares that I've seen from various folks in this course, you're already there. You're getting there. I ask, what is the best, what is the worst experience in a project? And what's your response and how did you manage it? And then this loop. Or this loop, the management response may say, the question isn't clear enough, or we're asking the wrong question, or we're asking the right question, but we need to add a little bit more detail in order to get a better, clearer answer. And then these folks and these folks may even switch sides. Communication. You have to have a voice here. Absolutely critical. Okay, so there's that. But I also wanted to show you something. Now, don't get worried. I'm not going to ask you to do any of this. But I wanted to show you that there is math behind even the simple model. This is the model that we did. Principal, here's principal and interest with a possible oscillation involved here, but not necessarily. Uh, yeah, something here. And this is an example that also builds off of an example by Jim Duggan, who I will have make sure that he is listed in the source origins. And his book on system dynamics in R is something that we are going to use in the next round of this course. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a preview of that in another video. But here we have a resource. Is it available? Is it available normatively relative to the reference of availability? So we norm things here, and that's a very important aspect of modeling. We go to a growth rate, which is also normed, and that growth rate times the resource in this particular loop, each loop is an iteration, will be the increment, going back here, for the resource. Now, this is a very, very well-known model from the 1850s by Verhulst, population dynamics of animals, plants maybe, but this need not apply to humans, by the way. So normally we have resources, but here it is. The resource, if you work all of this through, is got a multiple an addition growth here, but it is contained or limited by 1 minus R over C. And here's the limitation: capacity. Carrying capacity is the limitation. And can we solve this? Yes, playing some tricks with, okay, this is algebra, equation 3. Equation 4 is more algebra, where we break out this C over R times C minus R into two fractions called partial fraction decomposition. Don't know if you've ever had to play with this, but it is great algebraic fun. And for me, it's more fun than a crossword puzzle on a boring day or night. After that, I just draw a picture. And I line this up because it's always good to remember how to do things. So it's got 4 distinct steps. Do the algebra, take integrals of both sides, and we use natural logarithms. There's a relationship between the natural base, so-called E, and the natural logarithm. They're inverses of one another. And they're actually 2 series of numbers, ongoing series. Our computer has no idea what infinity is. Our mathematical minds can, we can pretend to imagine it by saying suppose. But it's basically, in art, it is the horizon, and the horizon gets ever further out, and here we are, and it's that vanishing point. And that's called projective geometry. So you can apply whatever mindset you need to this. But anyways, all the algebra rules follow, and we get to something that Vensim will get to, which is an analytical solution. And sometimes we use this knowledge to help us formulate a model. And all of the rules inside of Vensim follow this algebra very, very closely. Okay, so there's that. I also have another one, but I'll show that at another time, of a two-stock model. It's basically the idea of a spring hanging from a door frame, and the spring, of course, has weight, and it's, mass, and it's just hanging there. And then you stretch it with a mass, and then you stretch the mass and the spring together and let it go boing. You know it's going to go up and down, right? It's going to oscillate. Okay, that's a two-stock model, and the two-stock models oscillate. We have an example of such an oscillation, and we should get into the analytics of oscillation a little bit. It's not that hard, and there's a couple of bonuses from that. We get to figure out how many times does something oscillate, bound up and down. Does it dampen? Does it expand? These are good questions to ask of inventory, for example, and that's where we got our first real big eye-opener, is that sales is smooth, but inventory is up and down like the proverbial yo-yo. So I just wanted to show you this, not to give you math anxiety at all, but to show you that there is clear, logical thinking behind this beautiful diagram. Okay, and that was the idea there. And then, so episode 2, which we're coming from, built all of this. Okay, so we have spent 10 minutes going over some wildly important concepts and ideas, and we should be discussing those in open forum whenever possible. Please attend the live sessions if you can. They will be recorded. But we came up with this closed loop diagram, which I now want to take to Vensim, take our thinking to a computable model. And that's where we're going. We're building computable models. In order to make computable models, we have to make a lot of assumptions. And so let's paper and pencil that model right now, and then attempt to put it into Vensim. So we're going to start out with, the way I usually do this is with the stocks. We'll just call this hours worked. I have one down here for quality. I have quality growing. System boundary is nice clouds there, but they're really important to how we operate here. And they can decline. So we're going to call recover. And we're all stressed out, yes, having seen all of that math. And there's going to be a linkage between these two, here and here. Check your notes and see that this makes sense. Check your notes. Okay. Now, hours worked is going to have a little bit simpler approach. There's going to be simply a change, or as Juan Martin Garcia, similar model. I'm using a model that I asked you to read about, so I'm repurposing it. He calls this variation. I'm calling it the change in hours. Now, these are hours worked. Okay. Now, the change in hours worked leads to this, but the more we work, the idea is the more we're stressed. And how do we know that? Well, read some literature. I'm going to post some literature on this. We're going to have a lookup table here. And it's going to look like this, where hours go up and stress goes up. And this stress times the hours, okay, will take away from quality. We're going to start quality off at 100. Hours, by the way, we're going to start off at 0 for keeping your box scores there. All right, so we got all of that. And so far, so good. Hours and something that we will call productivity, which is a real wild card here because we're not defining it any further than how many widgets can you make in an hour. And productivity, the number of widgets per hour times the number of hours give us production. How many widgets are you making today, in a month, over 5 years? Okay. And this production, notice how I'm building this. Okay. This production is going to feed a gap between, there's a gap, that's a gap, that there's a gap anywhere, that is a gap, okay, between what we'll call planned production and production. So it's really going to be the difference between this and this. So it's going to be, I'm going to put the calculation here, planned minus actual. This difference is going to feed the change. So it's like error management. Oh, we made an error. We didn't make as much as we want. It's not an error. It's a difference. It's an unfavorable difference in budgets. In the production budget says we're supposed to make, let's say, 5,000 of these things, and we're short. Okay, we're simply short. And because of that, we're going to need to change things. Change this. Change the hours. Now, okay, so we're, 1,000 short. How many extra hours do we need to make up that difference? Okay, well, that's one question. The other question I have is, how long is that going to take to change those hours? I'm going to get a call in the middle of the night. Bill, wake up! You got to go overtime here and go in and make 1,000 more widgets. By the way, on top of your regular work. Okay, that's the kind of thing that this model is kind of looking at, because they know my productivity. So it's going to be this difference divided by productivity to calculate the hours, but it's going to be modified by two things. Quality. It's going to be Q over 100. So if quality right now is 100%, well, plan minus actual divided by productivity times 1. Okay, but if it's less than that because of stress, well, the stress takes out hours, more hours worked, more stress, reduction in whatever is there, and that stress, you try to make it back up in a recovery mode as well. And that too is going to have a lovely little lookup. See here, but I suspect it could look well like this. Okay, the input is stress. I've got my inputs and outputs different here. Okay, input here is hours, and this is the stress. In terms of a percent reduction, okay, it's a reduction. How much are we taking out of the 100%? So it's a little bit like you're passing. You ace the course. Now the stress you deduct from that, and then how do you recover? You revise and resubmit your work. Okay, if you need an example, and this comes in here into the change. But look, I'm going to say it comes into there with a time to adjust. Now, so far, this is Juan Martin Garcia's young person's model. He's not doing production, he's doing income. looking at salary. If I work more, maybe I, will make more and so on and so forth. But I also get more tired. It's the fatigue model for him. I'm looking at any stressor. We have a lot of stressors. Lockdown was a stressor. It was something that made people reflect. And when you reflect, oh my goodness, you're taking time away from the job more than likely. You're distracted. Okay, distraction. Another one is you get worried about everything coming down around you. Definitely, we got enough of that going on in our lives. And certainly here where I'm broadcasting from the Bronx, uh, all of a sudden I don't attend to every detail. I'll miss payments, miss deposits, uh, miss people I'm supposed to meet. Oh, I didn't make it there on time. You can understand that the stressors are legion here. There's many, many of them, and it's hard to recover. Okay, so we have a model here, a productivity that's remarkably constrained, and this constraining factor is very, very similar to this model, but I think, much more interesting in the capacity factor. Capacity is the limiting factor here for resource extraction. If we're talking about a mine of lithium or tungsten or tin or oil or whatever it is we're burrowing and plowing into the earth. Okay, so we're 21 minutes in. I think we've got enough here to build a diagram. What I want to do is just make sure we understand change. And I'm going to write out the planned minus actual production. I'm going to divide that by productivity. Nothing up our sleeves. Ratios everywhere. We learn ratio analysis early on when we form teams and look at skills and what we need to do to get a score on a game or something like that. We learn that very, very early on. But we in business, we use ratios quite a bit in economics, finance, especially financial statement analysis. Some operations, and in statistics, ratios are there, and they sensitivity parameters, for example, are ratios of 2 percentage changes. It's dimensional analysis. So we should really there we go. That's the other one. So if we take this time indicator, how long it takes, it's a duration. And as a duration, it'll come in as if it were dimensionless. Okay, dimensionless in Vensim. And that's good. Okay, just leave it as a dimension. It's something that factors. This was also modified by Q over 100. And there we go. So I just wanted to be sure we understood what this number was so that we had a good idea. And units. I mean, the units here are units, stuff we're making, units per hour, hours. What is this? This is still hours. This is dimensionless. More dimensionless. That's a stress indicator is dimensionless, but it's feeding it with hours. Dimensionless to dimensionless to dimensionless becomes a fraction. Oh gosh, this is going to be units and units feeding this. So we have units divided by units per hour, further divided by a number, multiplied by a number. So the units are, okay, the dimensions here are not changed. And this is the same as units divided by units times hours, working the algebra of this so that we get hours. Think about the dimensional analysis as we go forward. It is not trivial. And if we don't put in units, Vensim will just assume everything is hunky-dory, which is a technical term for watch out, be careful. Put the units in where you can. Think about the units, paper and pencil it to make sure all of these items, because the only thing that can hit this box is H, hours. All right. The only thing that can hit this to get this table working are hours. The only thing that can hit this is units, units, units. Production is units per hour times hours. Hours divided by hours is 1. Anything times 1 is itself. We get units. Okay, think through that. And I have gone over my time. Plenty of time now to run off to your next meeting. The next thing we will do is, having done the paper and pencil, we'll look at the Vensim model. Take care. Again, thank you very much for your kind attention, and be encouraging to all of one another. We need it. Look at the work we're doing. Thanks, and see you in the next episode. Much, much to learn. It's wonderful. Take care.